Okay, good morning everybody. My name is Stuart Evans. I'm the CTO of a document management and invoice processing company called InView. I'll try and keep you awake for the next half an hour to 40 minutes. Always difficult to talk about invoice processing. It's in many ways one of the oldest technology solutions that's been delivered to businesses now, but one that is still very popular today, and ever more so given that its main benefits are around control and efficiency, and in an environment where we're all being asked to look at that, it's become a very popular solution to help businesses gain that extra bit of marginal competitiveness. So I'm always wary when I start because I don't know whether I'm going to retread ground you've already been on or not. So I'll just do it in my own style and we'll see how that turns out. What we'll cover today is very briefly what is invoice processing and what are the benefits. We'll have a little case study discussion on Adactus Housing Association, which is an example customer of ours, and then any questions at the end if you wish. First thing I'd like to do is just give you an outline of what we call invoice processing. I don't think it's anything unique or strange, so don't strain your eyes trying to work out what I'm saying that's new, but just for the sake of clarity. For us, it's about processing your purchase invoices. It's about going from the point of receiving those invoices to posting them onto a finance system. There may be other steps in the end-to-end procurement to pay problem space, but we're focusing in on the invoice processing section of that. For me, it comes into four broad areas, and I'm looking at this from a technology delivery point of view rather than a process point of view. First part of invoice processing is instead of having staff having to type data in to finance systems and manually work with the paper, we try and deliver an invoice capture and data extraction component to the solution. So that does two things. One is the harvesting and scanning in of invoices, whether they're emails, PDFs, paper documents that you receive through the post, harvesting all those in and making them electronic so that you can retrieve those easily, but also extracting the data from them. So this is actually reading data from the invoice in order to reduce the amount of data entry that you have to do, and also improve the quality of the data itself. So as we do that data extraction, the computer can do some checks to make sure that the values are right. Sometimes it can do better than the human being and the human eye. Once we've done that, we've got hold of our invoices, we now need to take it through the process of approval and coding. And every business does this, every business does it differently. Only slightly, but importantly, they do, and that's becomes more important with the size of the business and the complexity of the business. So we have to help a change happen in the manual process that some of you might still be doing, where rubber stamp goes on the paper invoice and you take it around a business. There's a real problem that the process follows the paper. You don't know where the process is unless you know where the paper is. You don't know what the data is until you look at that piece of paper, and only one person can usefully look at the paper at any moment in time. So a key part of invoice process automation is saying, well, we can let go of the paper, let go of the rubber stamp. For those of you who are addicted to the rubber stamp, it's all about grieving for that rubber stamp and letting go of it, and making that an electronic approval process so that you can distribute the task of approval, the task of coding electronically, and therefore people have it instantly and immediately to deal with. Excuse me. The next step, once you've pushed out the invoices electronically and you've gained coding information and you've gained approval information and you've collected all that data back, now it's a question of getting that data into the finance system and posting it onto the ledgers. What's important here is that you can do that in a controlled, audited and batch fashion so that it becomes very, very quick, very low on effort, but still very controlled to be able to deliver your data into your finance system. Really, that's the process done. Now the data's in the finance system. We've forgotten all about that paper a long time ago. We've enabled the business really, really rapidly. And then it's a question of dealing with payments and management thereon with your finance system. Nonetheless, a very, very important part of the whole solution set is that you've got an eagle eye on not only the current process that's going on, but also a historical view on how you've been doing in the past. So the ability to retrieve invoices and call them up at any time when you have queries, when there are problems, when there's payment review process in place, but also reporting to be able to know exactly how many invoices have been flowing through the system, where they are at a point in time, who sat on what, and knowing that down to the very exact invoice on the very day, on the very minute is really, really important operationally. And it's a unique benefit because with paper, you just don't know where it is. This is the most common problem we get faced with all the time with our customers, is that they have internal arguments about invoices going missing. They get queries coming in from suppliers. They don't know where it is. There's people making phone calls. It's a problem we all know all too well. It's been going on for years, decades even. In a way, I feel embarrassed even to be mentioning it again, but it's still going on. We deliver our solution to many, many customers. It's still going on. And I bet even within this room, it's still going on. That paper is being lost, it's being shuffled around, and it's an amazingly expensive process. When we describe the benefits of an invoice processing solution, I like to divide it into two vectors. One is control, and the other one is efficiency. And the simple truth is that you can't really focus just on one or the other. If you're a very large business, if you're doing over 50,000 invoices per year, if you're into the hundreds or even millions of invoices per year, efficiency is really, really, really important, and you'll get massive benefit. But that's not the only benefit. Control is also important. Control is being able to know that your process is being executed well, to know that the finances are not being abused and that people are being held to account. And that can be really important for very small businesses or very big businesses. And so when you look at the benefits of invoice processing, it's interesting to split them into two and have a look at it from an efficiency and a control point of view. And it's completely fair to demand benefits against both of those. If you're a huge commercial business, distributing, manufacturing, then the controls might not be important. It's just purely about throughput, speed of execution, and that's fine. However, if you are in public sector, housing associations where you have regulations to follow, actually the control becomes more important. So we find this quite interesting in terms of separating the benefits out, because we can talk to very large businesses where the focus is very strongly on efficiency. Maybe you have a very large AP team. Maybe you want to be able to actually scale up your process. You're looking at doing a merger and so on and so forth. And a lot of the value in mergers and acquisitions is the consolidation of overhead expenses. That includes financial teams, and the ability to actually say that it's my financial team that can not only take on that responsibility, but can actually absorb the increased volume, puts you in a very strong position strategically, let alone operationally. So I always find it helpful to think about that. So when we go back through the process, I'm just going to revisit it now. We talk about capturing of invoices and extracting the data from them. And here, what's the control benefit? The control benefit is actually, instead of having an ad hoc process around your business where maybe the invoices land in finance, maybe they don't, maybe they go to different departments, maybe they don't. Maybe someone sits on them for a while before you even get them, maybe they don't. You create this front door for all of your invoices. Your business doesn't really even recognize them until they've hit that queue of scanning or pulling into the invoice capture solution. And it's a behavioral change that happens instantly when you deliver the solution. People just understand, as far as the business is concerned, the invoice doesn't exist until it hits that front door. And that improves a control element because you get to see the invoices on time. People know what the behaviors are that should be, and they learn that very quickly. Efficiency of capture is very, very clear to talk about. It's faster and cheaper data entry for your invoices. Now, I'd be lying if I said it was more efficient for a very small volume of invoices. But if it's a very large number, then the efficiency suddenly starts to take off. And again, that's why you need to think about putting your feet on both pedals of the benefits to see what you want. What's the tipping point for that? I think you start to see efficiency gains at about 25,000 purchase invoices per year and upwards. Below that, I don't think it's worth measuring. But we have customers that, are up in the hundreds of thousands, right the way down to some customers with only 10,000 purchase invoices per year. But they've still gone through the automation exercise because they want the control benefits. Okay, it's very simple. Efficiency can also be about distribution. So when we come to the approval and the coding workflow, as I say, what you'll be doing with paper today, or even if you scan and then you email, is you're distributing things in an uncontrolled, unmeasurable manner around your business. If you're multi-office, you'll be using internal post. Maybe that's a sunk cost, maybe it's not. It still takes time. The turnaround time on invoices is becoming ever more important in the current climate, and being able to guarantee that is ever important in the current climate. And that's where automation can absolutely help you, because not only will it definitely speed it up, you can definitely measure it. And that's really important. So for your approval and coding, what's key here is that you can use rules. You can use the computer that knows about your org chart. It knows about who raised purchase orders. It knows who has responsibilities in functions to route invoices for approval. You can manually route them, choose who should be looking at them, but you can also, if you are careful, automate that to some degree so that once the invoices are captured, they're instantly routed to the right person without anybody having to actually think or do anything. And again, that's a level of efficiency in itself. Where does the control benefit come in for approvals and coding? Well, a lot of people, when they're coding invoices today, they have a little cheat sheet somewhere, maybe in that little drawer on the left with a list of their codes. And when they're dealing with a paper invoice, they'll have a look at their cheat sheet. If they don't know the codes, probably they do, and they'll scribble their codes on it. Maybe they can only remember 2 or 3 codes, and they use those all of the time. So you get coding errors, you get bad coding, miscoding, all of these things going on. Well, if we can turn that into an electronic interaction, we can actually present only the codes to the right budget holders with it constrains only the codes that they should use. And we can even add various values to that if they're running out of budget on that, or whether we need to put stops on them dynamically. So control benefits can also be introduced by being able to distribute the invoices electronically and providing the end users with coding interaction and an approval interaction. We get lied to all of the time. I was talking to a housing association, not the one I'm going to talk about here, and they distribute their invoices out for approval to multiple offices dotted around the country where maintenance is being done tactically in those areas, cleaning, repairs, and so on. And so I said, well, and you're fine then, right? That all goes on, and the manager in office X, Y, and Z approves that invoice, and we're all good. And so they, having them told me this process for 15 minutes. And then finally it drops out at the end, and they say, well, actually, we don't actually do any of the things we've just told you for the last 15 minutes. The secretary just PPs the invoice because we can't be bothered to put it in the internal mail and actually get it sent out and get it back again and everything else. So in reality, although they've got a documented process and they were happy to talk to me about it at length, there's no control whatsoever. The invoices were all being signed off by the secretary. So being honest with yourselves when you go through this process of looking at it is really, really important, and it's actually quite a lot of fun. And then you will see when the control benefits and when the efficiency benefits are real. Personally, from an engagement point of view, I get involved, with customers before they buy solutions, but I also am involved with them all the way through the process. And if we can't see between us, the efficiency and control benefits to make the solution compelling, it wouldn't be worth doing. But pretty much every time there is a decent volume of expense invoices, especially within a business, or a control question mark about how the business is operating, a compliance driver, public sector, it's a given. There is enough requirement there. Once again, just recapping on the last step, being able to search and retrieve documents quickly, and also viewing and reporting. So, retrieving documents quickly, well, it's boring, isn't it? We can all do it now. It's like Google. Just type in an invoice number, type in a supplier, type in a date. You get the invoice back like that. That's fantastic, much better than walking, down hundreds of yards of folders to try and find something. But what are the benefits of that? Well, again, supplier inquiries. If you're on the back foot, if you're taking your time responding, it introduces, doubt. And the modern world's very good at feeding on doubt, turning it into a negativity, and then that harms your relationship with a supplier. If you're responsive, immediate, transactional even, so if there's an inquiry, you can say, well, I pulled that invoice and I've emailed it to you, done, you tell me if you think there's a problem. That's transactional. That's prompt to put you on the front foot or in front of the crease, to use a cricket metaphor, and you can now start to control your relationship with your suppliers, even about a simple matter like that. The reporting element is really, really interesting, and this is a big change we see after implementing a solution with the accounts payable manager or a finance director in a smaller business. To be able to say exactly how many invoices are in flight through your business today, going through this process, where they are sat, how long they've been sat there, is very empowering from a finance department point of view, and allows you to actually measure the quality of how you're responding to your suppliers and dealing with your payments. Generally speaking, when the customer first starts these reports, what we nearly always find is all the really big invoices and the longest delays are usually sat with the senior directors of the business, and then they ask us to eliminate them from the query so that the report's about everybody else. Instead of driving blind, making phone calls, guessing where things are, you can just run the report, run it every morning, run it every hour if you wish, and be able to know where anything is at a moment in time. That's the benefit for control around reporting, and the efficiency then of driving that invoice set through the business quicker by being able to focus on the problem cases is really apparent. I'm just going to give you some pictures to see what it's like to make it real. InView are a solution provider and a software vendor. We sell a workflow and document management solution. And we also use technology from Abby for the capture part of our invoice processing solution. Abby is a very well-known capture provider. They've got a stand here today. And we use it for all of our customers, from the very smallest right the way to the very largest. I'm just going to highlight what's key about it when we engage with customers to solve their invoice processing problem, because, as I say, they're all the same. Everyone's got the same process, but they're all different. It has to be dovetailed into the way that particular finance department operates, the way that business behaves, the way the individual staff needed to behave, the finance system that they have and its behaviors. Some finance systems are well behaved, some are shocking, some defend the data very well, some defend the data very, very badly. So you actually can wrap an extra layer of data protection around an older finance system to make sure the financial integrity of the data and the accuracy of the data is better than you're getting just in your finance system. So the key highlights about the capture process, and the only people that see this are people in the accounts payable team. It's purely the mill into which you bring in your emailed invoices and your postal invoices, and maybe invoices that have been scanned in different departments, maybe on MFDs, photocopiers, and then routed across the network. You bring them in through this application as a batch. You can bring in, 5, 10, 1,000 invoices as a batch. And it will automatically try and recognize the data from it and pull that data out. Work out who the supplier is. Work out the net, the VAT, and gross. Make sure that the net, VAT, and gross add up. Make sure that the net, VAT, and gross are in a good ratio. Okay, if they're not in a classic ratio based on tax codes, then maybe we'd like a supervisor just to cast an eye over it and say, okay, it's a tax-only invoice, so that's fine. Or, it's a composite tax code invoice, and I understand why it's out of ratio. When we look for that data on invoices, all purchase invoices are different. There's been a generation of technologies that use templating for that. More modern systems, like the solution that we use with Abby, there's no template required for most of the invoices. We'll search around for the data on the paper and we'll find it. Won't be 100% successful, but you'll get a very good uplift of that data. For the special cases, the really weird invoices, usually councils, people who don't use normal vocabulary or normal layouts for invoices, we can still template for those edge cases. But generally speaking, no templating is required because the technology within Abby will hunt for the data and find that for you. It's always important with all capture scenarios, whatever anybody tells you, it's not 100% successful, and it's really bad with handwriting for invoices, and there's always a need for supervision. In fact, in invoice processing solutions, it's actually volunteered into. A lot of finance departments would rather see every invoice and actually do some data entry here while they're looking at the invoice. Why not? It's very fast, very efficient, very clean. If we're going to have to look at this invoice, let's look at it once, let's deal with the data now. What we have on the right-hand side here is the captured data, and when you click on the individual fields like the invoice number, it will navigate the page and the paper position to show you on the paper where it's found that data. So you don't have to scroll around and hunt around. It's a very efficient product to use. What's important is all these fields are customizable and you can add them and you can change them. So we have a standard solution, but the first thing we do is we sit down with the customer and we go through their requirements, just like any other business should do. Because all of those requirements are slightly different. Someone would like to capture maybe a property reference at the same time. Someone would like to maybe do the coding right here and now. In some small businesses, they'll just say, oh, finance will code it as soon as the invoice comes in. Some businesses will just do VAT splitting here and then push it out for general ledger coding out to the approvers. So this is a very powerful interface. There's the workhorse behind processing the invoices. Once the invoice has gone out to the rest of the business, actually everything gets pretty easy after that. Here's an example of an interface for gaining approval, but also coding from budget holders throughout a business. So as soon as that invoice has been captured, it's been saved away, and within a minute, an email would have landed, if required, at a budget holder's desktop saying, can you please go and click on this hyperlink and sort out this invoice for me. Customizable set of coding options here so that you can design your own coding model. And we have some property companies with quite complex coding requirements to be able to specify everything about the invoice. Sometimes it's simply a general ledger code. So very rapid, friendly user interfaces, ones that work on tablets, ones that work even on phones, so that you can reach out to your budget holders wherever they are and kind of put a smile on their face to make it easy for them to be able to code the invoices. Sometimes you want second level approvals as well. So maybe someone's done some coding, but now it's above a certain level. With our workflow, we can decide, we can encode the regulation rules about how you want to process your invoices to make that automatic. And just think about that for a moment. It's all very well having your regs written down or your policy or standard operating procedure written down in a document, shoved on a shelf somewhere and pointed out when a new employee arrives. But I think that era is dead. if you can embody the process that you've taken the effort to sit down with in your team and design, if you can embody that into a technological solution, you can point at it. You can say, this is the pathway that invoices go down based on the regulations. It happens in a machine, and we can audit that machine. We can just run reports off of it and show what's going on. We can demonstrate that our regs are being followed, and we can prove that they're being followed right. So here is an example simply of saying, okay, maybe after an invoice has been approved, it goes on to somebody else simply for review and approval. Simple approval screen, approve, reject, put a reason in, press submit. No paper involved, all instant, all audited, all tracked. So this is where you get your efficiency and your control from. An example of some of the reports that we do. Most finance departments don't really like pie charts in reality, in my experience. They like lists that get to the point. But it doesn't really matter what the representation is. The key thing is the data. Seeing where an invoice is, what step in the process that you have defined it is at, how long it's been there, and who it's sat with. So you can decide what needs chasing up and what doesn't. Some workflows are designed so that when someone has to process an invoice, and generally speaking, our customers expect budget holders to sort invoices out within 2 to 5 days. But usually they have a park option to say, I'm querying this, I've got to go and call the supplier. So I'll flag it up as being queried, and that means when we run the reports, you can say, well, that one's been sat there for a long time, but we know someone's looking at it, so we'll give them some more time. Everyone knows what's going on, and the temperature in the office stays cool. Examples of easy retrieval of invoices. I'm just going to give you a glimpse of Sage 200 here. Really, all applications have some degree of integratability, but it varies. It varies an awful lot. I've dealt with hundreds, and there are thousands more out there. But the sort of thing that we try to do is enable hyperlinks to be put onto a finance application so that the images of invoices can be pulled up inside of the application that the finance department live in. For the rest of the business, if you have a document management system, you can just call up the web browser, type in an invoice number, and call up the image. It's all very, very easy, and that's what's so attractive about invoice processing. I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of a housing association. Housing associations are a great example. 70,000 invoices per year, semi-public in their behavior, an obligation to demonstrate they have proper controls. Most of them really struggle to implement purchase order processing. Invoice processing is a great solution for that because they can put this in first and then take their time getting to purchase order processing. This will never go away. There will always be expense invoices. There'll always be surprise invoices. So this investment doesn't get devalued by actually achieving purchase order processing. It buys time and a controlled path to it. Change management is really important. A lot of housing associations haven't behaved themselves very well for a long time. They certainly haven't been very good at managing money. For many finance directors who've been moved in to improve the business, invoice processing has been a clear option for making a very safe, win-win improvement to that function. There's almost no downsides. There's a very containable cost to doing this. It's a relatively fixed price procedure and demonstrates some form of transformation within the business. Just emphasizing process. Everybody's process is different, even though they're doing the same thing. Even housing associations between them are doing different things. Even different property management companies, they have very, very similar financial setups and are using similar applications. The process changes each time. That consultation is really important. You have to be very, very honest and describe your process as it is today, and then you have to look at what you would like to change to moving it into an electronic environment. Some businesses don't want to change anything, they just want to copy it into the new environment. Some can see ways to immediately make efficiencies. Neither is the right answer, it's all about actually the workshop and having the discussion, and just mapping that out usually with a few people from the finance team and maybe a willing budget holder or two. So I'm just going to summarize again by showing the efficiency control benefits. And if you take anything away today, the rest of it's just technology. It's just efficiency and control benefits. Pick the ones that work the most for you, and that will make your business case. If you can see enough of those, then invoice processing becomes a clear and affordable option within the panoply of possible things that you could do in terms of projects. So just put those two brackets in your mind, go through them, and seek those benefits because they're there. I've tried not to run over time, so hopefully that's bang on time.